Welcome to UPSCpractice.com. Let's take a look at this article on the Havana Syndrome. The Havana Syndrome is a set of medical signs and symptoms reported by United States and Canadian embassy staff in Cuba dating back to late 2016, as well as subsequently in some other countries including Austria and Germany. In 2017, Donald Trump accused Cuba of perpetrating unspecified attacks causing these symptoms. The United States reduced staff at their embassy in Cuba to a minimum in response. In 2018, US diplomats in China reported problems similar to those reported in Cuba, as did undercover CIA agents working in other countries with partner agencies to counter Russian covert operations. Subsequent studies of the affected diplomats in Cuba, published in the journal JAMA in 2018, found evidences that the diplomats experienced some sort of brain injury but did not determine the cause of the injuries. While there is no expert consensus on the cause of the symptoms, a co-author of the JAMA study considered microwave weapons to be a main suspect for the phenomenon. US National Academies of Science, Engineering and Medicine Expert Committee concluded in December 2020 that microwave energy, specifically directed pulsed RF energy, appears to be the most plausible mechanism in explaining these cases among those that the committee considered, but that each possible cause remains speculative. The US intelligence services have not reached a consensus or formal determination on the cause of the Havana Syndrome, but unnamed sources in intelligence and two presidential administrations have expressed suspicions to the press that Russian military intelligence is responsible. Let's take a look at Cuba. In August 2017, reports began surfacing that American and Canadian diplomatic personnel in Cuba had experienced unusual, unexplained health problems dating back to late 2016. The number of American citizens experiencing symptoms was 26 as of June 2018. The health problems typically had a sudden onset. The victim would suddenly begin hearing strange, grating noises that they perceived as coming from a specific direction. Some of them experienced it as a pressure or a vibration, or as a sensation comparable to driving a car with the window partly rolled down. The duration of these noises ranged from 20 seconds to 30 minutes, and always happened while the diplomats were either at home or in hotel rooms. Other people nearby, family members, and guests in neighboring rooms did not report hearing anything. Let's take a look at the impact on American diplomats. Some US embassy individuals have experienced lasting health effects, including one unidentified diplomat who is said to now need a hearing aid. The State Department declared that the health problems were either the result of an attack or due to exposure to an unknown device, and declared that they were not blaming the Cuban government but would not say who was to blame. Affected individuals describe symptoms such as hearing loss, memory loss, and nausea. Speculation centered around a sonic weapon, with some researchers pointing to infrasound as a possible cause. In August 2017, the United States expelled 2 Cuban diplomats in response to the illness. In September, The US State Department stated that it was removing non-essential staff from the US Embassy and warned US citizens not to travel to Cuba. In October 2017, US President Donald Trump said that I do believe Cuba is responsible. I do believe that. Going on to say, and it's a very unusual attack, as you know, but I do believe Cuba is responsible. On 2nd March 2018, the US State Department announced it would continue to staff its embassy in Havana at the minimum level required to perform core diplomatic and consular functions due to concerns about health attacks on staff. The embassy had been operating under ordered departure status since September, but the status was set to expire. This announcement served to extend the staff reductions indefinitely. Let's take a look at the symptoms experienced by diplomat Catherine Warner.
I woke up in the middle of the night and I could feel this sound in my head. It was intense pressure on both of my temples. At the same time, I heard this low humming sound, and it was oscillating. And I remember looking around for where this sound was coming from because it was painful. October of 2017, I started to get hives all over my body, really bad hives. I woke up with headaches every day. I started to feel tired. The simplest things would just make me very, very tired. Yes, my symptoms would get so bad that I would throw up. We hadn't heard about what happened in Cuba. I mean, there were headlines in the news about hearing loss and attacks to our diplomats, but we didn't know the details.
Also, let's hear what Dr. Charles Rosenfarb, the medical director of the Bureau of Medical Services, said when he testified on attacks on US diplomats in Cuba.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the Department's response to the recent health attacks in Havana. I'll be describing the evolution of the medical response and what we currently know about the health effects. From the individual and public health perspective, managing this evolving situation is challenging. Mission personnel describe a multitude of symptoms, many of which are not easily quantifiable and not easily attributable to any specific cause. The sharing of information that occurs in a small, tight-knit community has helped identify more affected personnel, but, as typically is the case with any community outbreak, also can complicate an epidemiological evaluation. However, the most challenging factor is the lack of certainty about the causative agent and therefore the precise mechanism of the injuries suffered. Individuals first visited our medical unit in Embassy Havana starting in late December 2016 and January 2017, reporting various symptoms including headache, ear pain, dizziness, and hearing problems. They associated the onset of these symptoms to their exposures with unusual sounds or auditory sensations. Various descriptions were given: a high-pitched beam of sound, an incapacitating sound, a baffling sensation akin to driving with the windows partially open and in a car, or just an intense pressure in one ear. Since the symptoms first reported primarily affected auditory functions, an otolaryngologist at the University of Miami, highly experienced in evaluating acoustic injuries in military personnel, was identified to perform additional assessments. Between February and April of last year, this specialist evaluated 80 members of the embassy community. Of the individuals evaluated in this initial tranche, 16 were identified to have symptoms and medically verifiable clinical findings of some combination, similar to what might be seen in patients following a mild traumatic brain injury or a concussion. In early July, my office convened a panel of academic experts to review the case histories and the test results gathered to date. Although the assembled group identified that some of the symptoms and findings could be caused by other things such as viral illnesses, previous head trauma, aging, and even stress, the consensus was that the patterns of injuries that had so far been noted were most likely related to trauma from a non-natural source. In light of this emerging clinical parallels to mild traumatic brain injury, the nationally recognized Brain Injury Center at the University of Pennsylvania was identified to provide detailed reevaluations of employees with prior exposures and to evaluate embassy community members who reported new exposures. As a result of further evaluations begun in late August, additional individuals with exposures that occurred prior to April 24th were added to the list of confirmed cases. 2 other individuals who reported exposures that occurred in mid-August 2017 were also medically confirmed as cases, bringing the total number of cases to 24. I'd now like to describe the health effects identified so far. While the descriptions of the auditory sensations have varied, all medically confirmed cases have described some combination of the following symptoms, beginning within minutes to hours of their exposure of the event: sharp, localized ear pain, dull unilateral headache, tinnitus or ringing in one ear, vertigo, visual focusing issues, disorientation, nausea, and extreme fatigue. In many of the patients, the acute symptoms seem to resolve within days to weeks, but other health issues emerged that were more persistent. These have included cognitive problems, including difficulty with concentration, working memory, and attention, recurrent headache, high-frequency unilateral hearing loss, sleep disturbance, and imbalanced walking. As in the acute phases, the duration and severity of these later symptoms have varied widely. Defining the prognosis for the confirmed cases is extremely difficult, since no precise analog for this possibly novel syndrome exists. Some patients remain symptomatic months after their exposure. The persistent symptoms have improved to varying degrees in all individuals. However, some after extended rehabilitative therapy, some over time without treatment. 10 of the 24 patients have returned to either full or part-time work, while others continue to receive treatment with an anticipation of return to duty. However, at this time, we are unable to state whether or not the injuries may result in adverse long-term consequences to the individual's future health or functional abilities. All government personnel who travel to Havana on official duty now receive a detailed medical briefing and are encouraged to undergo pre-deployment screening, including baseline audiograms and neurocognitive testing. We have formally requested assistance from the Centers for Disease Control for performing a broader epidemiologic evaluation and providing appropriate medical information to the American public. Discussions have also been held with the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke at the National Institutes of Health regarding its participation in ongoing medical investigations. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for listening to this article on the Havana Syndrome. For more such articles, install the UPSC Practice app from the App Store.